All right, I'm Sonia Showalter, and today I'm going to do this video. I tend to get kind of long on my videos simply because I enjoy being here with you. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'll try and keep this one a little more concise so that you don't have to watch 45 minutes to learn how to do something that takes only a few minutes. All right, we're going to talk about the Tacky Vilene. Now the Vilene, you may be familiar with it. Oh, I should have picked up a plain piece of Vilene. But the Vilene is a water-soluble stabilizer, and it looks like interfacing. It's white, and it looks kind of like a thin, meshy type of stabilizer, but it's water-soluble. It comes in the regular, which is not tacky at all, and that's what we stitch lace on. I always recommend 2 layers, and we do have a video on, we have 2 videos. One's pretty comprehensive on the different stabilizers, and the other one is more on the nitty-gritty on hooping it and stitching out your project and finishing it. But this one is going to deal with the Vilene that has the tacky side to it. By the way, I get all of my Vilene from allstitch.com or allstitch.net. Oh, I'm going to backtrack a second because I do want to give my dealer credit. I had gotten it from my local dealer, the Vilene, and then this last time I ran out. I needed it quickly, and Bill Cohen sent me some, and I promised him I would do, I was intending to do this video. It's been a couple of months or maybe more. So Bill, shout out to you. I'm finally doing this video like I promised. So All Stitch, I get all of my Vilene now from them. It's just so easy. I'm a homebody, and getting out and shopping is not my thing. So this makes it really convenient, and it arrives in 2 or 3 days. It's, I mean, in the Houston area. So anyway, it works out really well to just order it for me. And I have these huge rolls of the regular Vilene that I get from All Stitch, and those last me probably 8 to 10 years, just because I get such huge rolls. So, but I want to thank them for being such good supporters of my embroidery. Okay, so when I cut, I get my roll out, and I just go ahead and cut several pieces so that I'll have them ready to go. I stick them in my drawer. They're a little bit curly on the edge. Just try and lay them flat if you do this, and because you don't want, I have a few pieces in there that are curled, and the edges start to separate a little bit because I'm not being cautious when I'm digging through the stabilizer drawer. But of course, it's better to just maybe even stick them in a folder or something. Maybe I'll start doing that. That way they stay nice and flat, and they'll curl a little bit, but that's fine. It's just you don't want it to damage the edges and lose its tackiness there. And this is the pieces that I cut. See what happens here? It's still good, but this is what happens. This is what I cut for my 5x7 hoop. And that's generally, I don't always use, I don't normally use anything bigger than that. I have used it bigger than that for my bodices, the petite boutique girls' dresses and things. And I'll get into that in a second. But when I cut a stack like this, I'm not going to cut a stack like this for the giant hoops because I don't use those very often, so I'll just cut what I need when I need it. For these others, I do keep a little stash because I don't want to have to pull the roll out every time I do a project. All right, so so I cut them like this so they fit, and you'll notice it's a pretty close fit to my 4x4 hoop. And the reason is, I used to cut it bigger, but I'll show you in a second what happens when I actually hoop the stabilizer. And this is why I cut it this way. And in addition to them being this way, I also cut off the corners. because the corners create too much excess and it gets in my way when I do my hooping, and you'll see in a minute why I prefer to cut off the corners. It's just excess, it sticks to itself and it gets in the way, it's bulky. So what I do is I take the stabilizer and I peel off the paper. Okay, and here's it. Once you practice this a few times, you're going to think, oh my gosh, that is so easy. So what I do have a video that's on doing the napkin corners with the cutaway corner, and it's the same hooping technique. I use it for that particular project. I use the Tacky stabilizer. You don't have to have the Tacky, but if you're doing anything that resembles appliquing fabric, so imagine, forget that this is water soluble and it's going to disappear. If you're doing anything that's like an applique onto the water soluble, for example, the napkin corners, it's basically an applique, what you're doing. You're sticking the fabric down to the stabilizer, you're trimming away where the needle stitched the outline, and then you're finishing up with the embroidery with the satin edge and all that. It's exactly like doing applique, except when you're done, this piece of fabric is going to actually wash away and leave you with a finished edge. And that's what this stabilizer is good for. If I have something like my little mug rug where I'm appliquing, it's basically the one with the eyelets, the laced mug rug, where the eyelets stitch around the edges of the square and then you lace it together with ribbon. That's done exactly like an applique also, but I don't really need this tackiness because it's just a little square piece of fabric. So all I do is just put a little basting spray on the stabilizer, and that little piece of fabric will stay nice and rock solid stuck to my stabilizer. So this kind of adhesive is overkill for something like that. So save this for those projects where your napkin might pull off of the, there's weight here as the machine's moving, and it'll pull off the edges of your fabric. So somebody has a question?
Joy wants you to say again if it's the wash away Vilene.
It's wash away. I think all the Vilene is wash away. So there's the regular kind that's not tacky, and then there's the tacky kind. So, and you don't want to use this for lace. This is for where you're applying fabric and the fabric might move on you. You want to make sure it stays nice and secure and stuck down until the stitches are finished. This is what you want to use. So,
and Deborah said that she placed an order with all stitch today and it shipped out within an hour. And if you live in Maryland, you can actually pick up your order.
Oh man, I envy the Maryland people. I might actually get in the car and go over there if they were in the same town that I'm in. But good for you. Great. And we're not, other than helping each other get exposure and share some of our tips and things, I'm not getting a cut from whatever you order, okay? I love All Stitch, and I just wanted to give them a shout out for being such great company. Okay, so here's what you do. And can they see everything? Okay.
Yes.
I don't just lay this down and then start tacking it down. You have to stretch it because it's too soft. And I will preach about stretching your stabilizer, not to the point you're tearing it and destroying it, but till it's drum taut. Because if your stabilizer is wobbly under your fabric's not really being stabilized. That is my theory. That's what I live by when I'm doing my projects, and that's what I believe, and that's what I practice. So there might be people who disagree with me, but I'm telling you that's what I practice, and you can take a look at my photos and see if you think I know what I'm talking about or not. And I'm stitching my designs now, so I'm not stitching everybody's designs, so perhaps someone else has different instructions depending on their embroidery pattern. But if you're doing my patterns, please do follow the instructions and you will succeed. All right, so here we go. I lay it down and just eyeball it. Make sure you have enough around all the edges. And then what I do is I just pick 2 edges. It can be this way, but I'll just do this. I stretch it, and you're going to get a pucker, but that's why we're stretching it. All that extra needs to be pulled. Okay, then I turn the hoop, and when I press it down, I'm kind of making sure it sticks. Sometimes it'll pop off if I was standing here with the tacky peeled off or the paper peeled off, and it might have dried out just a little. Don't panic, it will stick. All right, if it comes off, just put it back. Okay, then I pull this way, and you're not trying to get it tight the first time. You just need to get it tight, okay? It's not going to be drum tight right now. Okay, I secure it, kind of massage it so it sticks to the hoop. And sometimes I'll pull the opposite corners, and sometimes I'll just take the corner. Now when you do this, it might pop off this side, but with practice, you'll see it hardly takes any time. You just need to practice. And here's why I cut those corners off. And you don't have to measure them or anything. I just eyeball how much of the corner, because I don't want a whole bunch of stabilizer stuck to itself right here. I want this to be as smooth as I can. I don't want lumpiness. Remember, this hoop has to go inside the other hoop. We don't want it to be catawampus because it's really thick on one side and not thick on the other. All right, so this corner got pulled. It should feel kind of hard by the time you're done. And if you have to, you may have to pick it up and pull again in one direction or the other. So here's another corner. And so sometimes after you get the corners set, you're going to find that, oh, there's still a little bit of give right here. So you can pick that up and pull it again, take up a little more slack. In fact, I do that probably 100% of the time. Take up a little more, and you can see it pulling, and then just stick it down. And you really don't need more than this. If you feel more comfortable cutting a bigger piece of stabilizer, then there's no real problem in that. I'm just saying, you know, you can preserve your stabilizer by not cutting too much, or not allowing too big of a margin, because it's really not necessary. And you can just pick it up and keep pulling until it is nice and taut all the way around. Oh, this side is really good. This side is pretty good. I'll do just a little bit more here. And I hold it up against the edge until I get this down, like that. All right. And I want my edges to be as smooth as I can. You're going to have little puckers, but kind of like with gatherers, you want to make them even. You don't want to have it all bunched up in one spot. So that one's just a tiny bit soft. Okay, push it down against the edge and then secure it. My hands are so dry. Our climate has been really dry, uncharacteristically so lately, and my hands feel like alligator hands. But I didn't dare put on lotion because I was going to handle the Vilene and didn't want to try and stick it down and find out it's not sticking because it's got lotion all over it. So, if my hands look like alligator hands, it's because they are. All right. So this is nice and taut. Feel the corners, make sure everything is evenly taut. Sometimes you can get everything tight, and when you feel the corners, they're kind of mushy feeling. You don't want that. So you would just go back, peel it back, and pull it a little more, and then you're good. And you don't want to put your hoop on like this. You do want to secure it. And I happen to I think I paired this with the wrong outer hoop. I normally have my hoops set so that they already fit together just right. I didn't this time, so you're seeing me adjusting. I rarely do this after the fact. I usually have my hoops all fitting together nicely because I never, ever, ever rely. In this case, it's not a big deal because my stabilizer isn't really going to move right now. But when I hoop anything, once my hoop is together, I never, ever, ever tighten the screw because that is not going to stabilize your fabric. And sometimes you even create a pucker right where the screw is tightening. So you always want to have your hoop pretty much set where it's going to be. If I feel like I need to tighten my hoop a little bit, I'll unhoop, tighten my screw, a quarter turn or whatever I think it needs. And that's good right there. So I would actually unhoop my project and get my hoop to fit together just right, and rehoop. I don't ever tighten the screw after it's been hooped. In this case, like I said, it's not a big deal because your stabilizer is stuck to the hoop and it's ready for a project. Now, like I said, this is in those cases where you're going to apply a piece of fabric and like a napkin corner, you've got this big napkin and it wants to peel off of there, and as the hoop moves around, you'll see your napkin starts to move, and so it'll hold it down tighter than just regular spray adhesive. But my napkin corners do come with a basting stitch as part of the process because it will still peel off just because the napkin's going to cause drag and it could become an issue. The other thing that this is good for is in the larger hoops is the bodices, like I mentioned before. So I do the same thing with my bigger hoop. Oh, and before I tell you more about that, once you're done with this, with a project like this, and you may have noticed I didn't have any stabilizer on my hoop, on this hoop, when we started because I needed a clean hoop to show you. I don't normally care for slick, shiny, smooth hoops because that just works against me when I'm trying to hoop stuff and keep it in place. But so what I do is once I'm done with a project like this, instead of removing the stabilizer after I'm done, what I do is instead of peeling this off of here, I just take my scissors and just run it on the inside of the hoop to remove my project and leave the stabilizer on there because that creates, that helps provide grip for future projects. And I will do this. I have a hoop here that's got several layers on it, so I'll just keep it going for a few layers because when it gets that cushy feel, I mean, it's not really, really super thick, but there's enough of just a hair of a, microscopic cushion there, and it just provides such a great grip for your projects. And on this one, whenever I cut my stabilizer, I usually have like a 1-inch lip on the length of the roll as I'm cutting these squares out. And that, I save those strips, and I will go ahead and I added to this particular one because I'm finding, or I found it, I don't remember how long ago, maybe several months ago or earlier in maybe a year ago. I realized if I added the strips right here to add a little more thickness to my grip and wrapped it around over the top, then now what I can do is when I hoop something and I need to hold the edges of my project, I can actually stick pins on the surface of my hoop. and keep my project, if it's a piece of fabric that's just laying there like this, I could pin it down, keep it from falling in. Or if it's something that's wanting to slip a little bit into the, not stay taut in the hoop, I might be able to flip it over, stick a few pins, and then flip it back out to help keep it in place. It's just a nice thing to have around your hoops. And then if they get yucky looking and you need to replace it, you can just simply, dampen your hoop or peel it off and then dampen a rag and wipe it down, which is what I did to my hoop this morning so that you could see a hoop without anything on it. I think that's pretty. Oh yes, this size is for some of my bodices, the doll bodices, and certain. I think some of the smaller children's bodices. They're in the hoop for dresses. You do the bodice in the hoop, and this is what you would use is this, and you exactly the same method, just a bigger hoop, but you need to make it taut. And it's just, I always press my fabric, starch it till it's crisp, and then that makes it easier to trim. It's almost like cutting paper, and it keeps it from puckering and doing all kinds of stuff, and it sticks to the stabilizer nice and flat. It's just a great way to go when you're doing that kind of project. Yes?
Linda wants to know if they've done a small item, can we just patch a piece in?
I don't ever patch my stabilizer. If you're doing a small item, I mean, anything you want to experiment with, other than, I don't recommend patching, but you can. I mean, I had a hole in my stabilizer one day. I even posted a picture, and I think I said something, it's not the end of the world, but I put like a piece of duct tape to keep my stabilizer from tearing. But, of course, you don't want to patch it where you're going to be stitching, and I suppose it's doable. But I would never stick a piece of stabilizer in here, stitch a design, cut the design out, and then patch the hole with stabilizer in order to stitch another design in that same area. The only time I've ever patched it is in that instance where I got a hole I don't remember how the hole appeared, but anyway, the stabilizer is tacky, but I don't think it's tacky enough to hold together if there are stitches pulling on it in different directions. Yes.
Marion wants to know if you have a favorite starch.
My favorite starch is the one that's at my fingertips, and I think, what do you buy me? Gary usually buys it for me at the grocery store. He does the grocery shopping, ladies. I know, he's the dream guy. And he does dishes and he cooks. But he buys the starch for me, and I just, Faultless is what's at the grocery store. I've also bought, what's the other one? It's not called starch. It's been a while since I've bought it.
I'd like to say I shop around and find the best price, but I don't. I just find whatever's quick.
That is the downfall of not going to the grocery store with him. It's like, how much did that cost? Oh, I don't know. Anyway, but I'm not particular about starch. The only reason I even have a can of starch these days is because my spray bottle stopped spraying. We all know about spray bottles that don't last. But normally what I do is use my leftover Vilene, not the tacky kind, but the regular from all the lace and stuff. And we all have gobs and gobs of that pieces left over we don't know what to do with. You can, take a couple of handfuls and melt them down in some water. And I even showed Gary how to do it for me. But you can strain that goo to make sure you don't have pieces of lint and thread and whatever. And then add water to a spray bottle. I don't have a working spray bottle right now, but a large bottle is fine. And I think it's like a couple of handfuls. And dissolve that in water, strain it, put it in your bottle, and then fill the bottle with water, and use that as your starch. Now I do use a pressing cloth because that stuff can start accumulating on your iron. I can't stop it from doing that, but using a pressing cloth helps to prevent that, or at least slow it down so you don't have to clean your iron. I don't have to clean my iron every day. The other thing I've done is actually dissolve some in a sink. If I'm going to have several squares that I'm going to be doing, I'll just dissolve some in the sink, slide my squares in there, and then make sure they're saturated. Remove them and blot them with my towel, and not my bath towel, but an old towel that I've got in there for lace projects. And then when they're almost dry, then I go ahead and press them. And that is the most efficient way, because when you start doing this square by square, pumping to saturate, that's just time consuming. So if you have a lot of, like if quilters out there, you're wanting to do several squares or whatever, you can soak your squares in that solution, and then when they're almost dry, you can just iron them and they'll come out like paper. And that's the way you want your project. That's your first step in stabilization, is starching your fabric, and it just makes a huge difference. So I think that about wraps it up, unless there are any questions. I'm looking at this computer screen over there. I think I've covered everything. Yeah, I think that was it. So remember, All Stitch, they're excellent people. They get it in the mail immediately, or same day usually. So it's not a big deal to plan ahead and get your supplies. And I have a stabilizer to last me, I think, another several years. So thanks for watching, everyone, and we will repost this on our YouTube channel so that you can catch it later. And if you have questions there that you didn't think of asking now, go ahead and post them. I'm not there every day looking at those posts, but when I do catch some of those replies, I will respond if there's a question there. So thanks for watching, everyone, and we will see you soon.